Thank you for staying with us on the conversation. Earlier on, we discussed the UK-Nigeria immigration deal. And right now, we switch to situations in Kenya, where the Deputy President, William Ruto, on Thursday, June 30, launched his manifesto that was anchored on 7 pillars aimed at transforming the country's economy using his bottom-up model. Before a crow of supporters, the Deputy President insisted the policies in his manifesto aimed at achieving durable growth while maintaining macroeconomic stability and empowerment of the people at the bottom of the pyramid. Now, Ruto, a former street hawker turned top-ranking politician, has been campaigning on the pledge to help hustlers trying to make ends meet. He has lambasted President Uhuru Kenyatta over his economic policies, including the country's huge debt burden of almost $70 billion, vowing to undo them if he wins power in August. Kenya's unemployment rate stood at 6.2% in 2021, according to the latest government data released in May, although the true figure is believed to be much higher. The finance minister in April unveiled a $28 billion budget aimed at helping the economy recover after the COVID-19 pandemic threw hundreds of thousands of people out of work. And now joining us live for this conversation, we have Eric Ngano, a lawyer and former presidential speech writer. Thank you so much for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you very much also. I'm happy to be here. Oluwatosin.
Oh, Oluwatosin. Okay. All right. I don't know why you have the Oluwatosin, but anyways, let's okay, that's the producer of the show, actually. So right now, let's deal with the situations right now in Kenya, where William Ruto has finally unveiled his manifesto. Let's break it down a bit. Now, he said trickle-down economics does not work because the free market is not free or fair. Now, why would he say that?
What we have right now in Kenya is that we are still operating on the momentum of the colonial state. And we just basically inherited the economic machinery. We were supposed in 1969 onwards to socialize the economy, that's to democratize it a bit, make it more inclusive. But by that time, it was a bit late because oligarchies had taken over, so that the structure that we inherited at independence has remained intact, and the majority are excluded. You remember, colonialism was obviously minority rule, which meant that the majority was disenfranchised. If you look at the economic structure right now, if you look at how we do, who is in and who is out, you get the strong feeling that the majority are still out and the minority are in, having a time of their lives. So what has happened is that when we say the economy to remain competitive, it's a free market, willing buyer, willing seller, demand, supply, it's been rigged already. In a word, it's been rigged by systematic problems that were not dismantled on time.
Okay.
So the problem just continues.
Eric, when he says this bottom-up economic model, what exactly does he mean? Because you talked about the evils of colonialism and how it has affected Kenya's economy. What is the bottom-up economic model of William Ruto?
This model is not. It's adding a bit more imagination to economic management and governance, in the sense that the conservative model of economic management is that if the people at the top, if the big firms do very well, if the multinationals do very well, if the manufacturers and industrialists do very well, they will create jobs and they will pay incomes to people, and they will, so on and so forth, involve the people lower down the rung in a trickle-down effect that then empowers, that then increases the incomes, of the people at the bottom, so that then everybody benefits. The big guys at the top get a big share, and the guys lower below, it increasingly, or rather, it decreases gradually to the bottom. And the problem with that is that, first of all, it didn't work. The top didn't expand at all, but its share of national product increased. So the guys at the bottom, because there's no trickle down at all, they were just left with nothing. As a result, our demographic situation is that First of all, we are a young country. Nearly 65% of this country right now are people 20 years and below. Secondly, 10 million Kenyans are either unemployed or underemployed. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics says that 10 million people are working in the informal sector and they are termed to be unlicensed. That means their working conditions are unsafe, their incomes are minimal, and basically they don't get to participate fully in the economy. And so therefore, the poverty remains and increases. The rest of them, 2.5 million subsistence farmers in the rural areas, are what our economic team have described as hardcore poor. That is to say that although they engage in agrarian activity, they don't produce enough food even to meet their own needs, let alone to sell a surplus to the market.
Okay, Eric, please just hold on that talk, because you've brought about the issue of the farmers who you call hardcore poor. Now, we also have joining us on this conversation, Alan Odero is a political analyst from Nairobi. Now, as part of William Ruto's manifesto, he said he would invest at least 250 billion Kenyan shillings in 5 years, effective 2023, to boost agriculture and food security. Now, earlier when I was talking with Eric, we looked at the trickle-down approach. Now, what are your thoughts on this supposed embellishment in the agricultural sector?
Ruto's economic model lays fallacy to the trickle-down economic effect that is blamed for the prevailing economic hardships at the moment. Just building up to what my colleague Neno has said, Kenya for a long time organized its economy around the trickle-down economic effect, whereby capital would be invested at the highest levels with the expectation that it will trickle down to the rest of the country, the rest of the spheres of the economic of the society. But then Ruto's new ideological turnaround argues that we need to invest the limited capital to areas whereby it ensures the maximum productivity. So he talked of financially retooling the farmers, the hardcore farmers as you called it, through provision of grants and cheap loans, through improving on the agricultural value chain, contrary to supply chain, ensuring that the agricultural productivity ultimately ensures profit in the long run through marketing, extension services, and all that. So, given that agriculture is the backbone of this country's economy, with the right intentions and with the goodwill to implement these ideas, by any challenges, it has the potential to significantly turn around the economic fortunes of our farmers. At the same time, given that we are a rapidly industrializing country, our economy right now revolves around the service sector, IT, of an overemphasis on the agricultural sector while ensures food productivity, potentially undermines a fairly equitable contribution to the other sectors of the economy.
All right. And now, Alan, judging from history, a lot of politicians come with this idea of change in mantra and so much goodwill. Now, Ruto talked about establishing micro, small and medium enterprise as the MSME Business Development Center in every ward. Now, we're not looking at just words here. We're looking at how achievable this can be. Can he achieve establishing micro, small and medium enterprises in every ward in Kenya?
Okay, manifestos generally are statements of intent. Manifestos generally are statements of intent. So at this moment, it's support-based, and the objective of servers across the country extend some amount of goodwill. However, one has to appreciate that resources are limited. We are a country that we now practicing devolution at the moment. So to put resources that will have an impact at every grassroots level in terms of the world, I think it would be much better if the technocrats in the economic think tank went ahead and perhaps provide a breakdown of how much do they predict or how much do they anticipate to provide to every ward. It's doable, but it will take a while. We need structures. We also need some kind of a balancing of economic priorities. And then, however, it's been speaking over time. We're talking of 50 billion Kenya shillings as an small and micro enterprises economic revolving fund, whereby the SME guys would access between what you call them grants or maybe cheap affordable credit. So, but in terms of cascading on maybe covering the entire political landscape of this country, I think it's a little bit of a stretch in terms of given that even right now we're practicing devolution, we have a problem with the devolved funds reaching every corner of the country in good time. So it's good in terms of intention, but in terms of practicability, I think we need a little bit more details, a little bit further, a comprehensive explanation beyond the words that they appear in the Region Manifesto.
Okay, good intentions, but the practicability is still questionable. Now, Eric, on health grounds, Ruto said there would be an establishment of new level 6 hospitals and 6 new sites and hiring an initial 20,000 healthcare workers. Now, will this suffice, and what do you think is needed to develop Kenya's health sector?
The health sector program is very well developed, very well publicized, and highly well received by the medical sector, the entire ecosystem of healthcare workers, service providers, and everybody. As I've said, the entire manifesto was prepared through a thorough consultative process, and so what we have here is not pie in the sky. It engaged professionals, it engaged the people who do the numbers, and it has a sustainable funding model with real figures inside them, with real structures that actually just can be activated and mobilized to do the right thing, just to turn them slightly around in the correct direction. The focus on preventative healthcare, the idea that catastrophic medical expenditure needs to be mitigated quite drastically, so that family incomes are not depleted every so often when a person falls sick. So we have a real problem that needs to be solved, and a solution that has been customized with specific, it's not just a general statement of intent or a policy direction, a statement of policy direction. It is actual strategic objective that needs to be delivered as soon as possible. And you have seen the figures that have been put in there. You have seen the situations of the facilities that need to be raised up. It was based on an assessment of the current system of referral hospitals, the current system of level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hospitals that are in the country, and their adequacy, so that we don't have a problem of people moving between counties and between regions, spending a lot of time that they don't have, and spending a lot of resources that they don't have across these places in search for healthcare. Now, since this healthcare is going to be extended to people who cannot afford it, we expect them, therefore, that we need to cater for more consumers, and we need to cater for a wider variety of health situations, conditions.
All right. Okay, Eric, you've emphasized on the need to improve the healthcare sector in Kenya. Now, Alan, over to you now, because last week at an economic forum, the Deputy President said he would deport Chinese nationals in jobs that could be done by locals if elected. Now, in his words, he said that Chinese nationals are roasting maize and selling mobile phones. We will deport all of them back to their country. Now, what do you make of this comment? Do you feel it was a bit too harsh?
Okay, while people would describe it as a populist statement, it resonates with the majority of the Kenyan populace. For far too long, even the debt crisis that we find ourselves in, a majority of people in the country are increasingly growing uncomfortable with the overly dominant presence of the Chinese in this country. It's true that Chinese undertake jobs that the locals can do. I think last year, there was a diplomatic row whereby a Kenyan member of parliament made a statement to the effect that he would mobilize the common people to go to the largest open-air market and kind of evict the local Chinese, because it's understandable that there's a balance between economic liberalism and economic protection and market protectionism, that while we are a liberal market, the government should find modalities of protecting, I would say, the infant industries, of protecting the sensitive parts of the economy, such that, because honestly, it makes no sense. So I'm speaking like how the ordinary Mwananchi would agree with Ruto. It makes no sense, for example, for a Chinese in the suburbs of Lavington selling fast foods by the roadside, engaging in construction work that the locals can't do. So while it appears populist, it resonates with a large chunk of this country, the hustler kind of voting segment, but then it also brings into question our commitment to the liberal model of economics. And then it also, at the end of the day, has the potential of raising xenophobic tendencies. For example, that as a political leader, the statements you make at the podium is subject to varied interpretations by your supporters out there. So, Honorable William Ruto, for example, doesn't have they cannot control his supporters. For example, if for one reason or another, some overly excitable crowd decides to maybe begin a crackdown on the Chinese in the middle-income neighborhoods in this country, it would kind of cause a diplomatic crisis for sure, and then also cause a little bit of security challenges. But then those statements, Ruto strikes a perfect chord with the ordinary
all right. Quickly, due to time, while we complain about the fact that this segment will actually be xenophobic statements, Wajakoya now mentioned a bit in his manifesto. Now, he talked about legislation of marijuana and rearing of snakes. So what do you make of this? Quickly, please.
Wajakoya's
because his own manifesto was quite different.
Yeah, he's come up with what appear to be outrageous statements, the border on populism, but then in terms of the practicability, when he's talking of legalizing marijuana at the moment, that would require relooking at our criminal code, looking at the constitution. That would require the numbers that you would have in parliament to review the legislation. So at the moment, it excites the young population, 18 to, I would say, 35 years old. Also, it has launched whereby the Rastafarian community to have is a sacrament. We're quite excited over there. But he's talked of crazy ideas such as exporting, rearing snakes and exporting the snakes to China to pay the debt. He talked of crazy ideas such as rearing dogs and then exporting them to China. So in terms of practicability, breaking them down on a serious level, I don't think they just pass the test of master, really. There are more populist statements too. I don't think moving on, Wajakoya is part of the French candidates who go into an election, not really to win.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Making a statement.
Thank you, Alan. I mean, I must say that Wajakoya came up with a very different kind of manifesto. Well, we look forward to the August 9 elections. Thank you so much, Alan Odero, and of course, Eric Ngeno, for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And that's where we'll draw the curtains for today's edition of The Conversation. Do join us again next week for another edition of The Conversation. I am Rita Omodia.